All right, you're welcome back. This is still TV3Newday's time now for the big issue, and shortly I will introduce you to my guest. But I want you to take a look at a video, of course, that's been trending since yesterday. Even before that, just about 2 weeks ago, the president appointed some 3 new members to the EC board, and there were concerns for at least one of them. The concern being that person was overtly partisan. So Dr. Peter Apiahene was one of the 3 that was appointed to the EC board by the president, Salima Ahmed Tijani, and then Reverend Ekia Ofori Boateng. But Dr. Peter Apiahene in particular was the one that many were raising concerns about, including the CDD and also the NDC and some other CSOs as well. And they accused him of being a TESCON patron. In fact, they said he had been the TESCON patron for the past 8 years and had been under consideration for political appointment under the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo government. But interestingly, and not surprisingly, we heard from government communicators who all said he was not a member of the NPP. In fact, the party organizer, national organizer for the NPP, Nana Boakye, had said that he had been national youth organizer for so long, and throughout that period, he had never heard of Dr. Apiahene being a TESCON patron. And he says he had a whole list of all the patrons, and Dr. Apiahene was not one of them. Well, a number of CSOs have come out to ask for his resignation. And yesterday, the Coalition of the Domestic Election Observers, Codeo, also at a press briefing, wanted the newly appointed commissioners to resign, accusing them of being politically exposed persons. So, leading member of Codeo, Reverend Dr. Fred Digbe, made the call at this press conference. And I would want you to take a look at what exactly he said were the reasons why he thought that even if the president will not take back the appointment, he expected that these persons who had been appointed and sworn in would resign honorably. Take a look.
Aware that voluntary and constitutionally grounded revocation of these unfortunate and democratically problematic EC appointments by the president is extremely unlikely. However, nothing stops the affected appointees, namely Dr. Peter Apiahene and Hajia Salima Ahmed Tijani, from voluntarily and honorably resigning from membership of the EC. This will be in the supreme interest of our country's continued democratic progress, election peace and credibility, and indeed the overall national interest. While both Dr. Apiahene and Madam Salima Ahmed Tijani meet the generic benchmark qualification stipulated under Article 44(1), we believe strongly that, having regard to the independent and non-partisan nature of our Electoral Commission and its mandate, the spirit of the Constitution demands far more in the way of one's suitability to be a member of the EC. We accordingly call on Dr. Peter Apiahene and Hajia Salima Ahmed Tijani to do the honorable thing and resign.
The conflict of interest is something which always can be dealt with, whether it is written in black and white or not. If somebody feels that somebody has a conflict of interest, and conflict of interest does not necessarily have to be actual, it can be potential. And so it's up to the public to see what they want to do about it. If it's okay with them, why not? That's all I can say. So even Codeo could even take the matter to court if they want to. Yes. All I know is that the only thing I can do is maybe analogy on the bench. If there's somebody you've worked with before, or you're about to maybe serve on a very important committee with, you'll be interacting very actively. If they have a matter before you, it's up to you to decide whether you will recuse yourself or not. For me, I would recuse myself, not because it's likely to influence me, but also in the justice or doing the right thing in public service. a lot of it also depends on public perception. Yes, and I think something to do with national elections and so on. Public perception is very important. That's one of the appointments that people have been talking about, plus so many other powers of appointment into certain positions where the relationship, and for it to be a healthy relationship, if there could be another methodology or process or procedure for the appointment, it will be more desirable. Yes. Like even the appointment of judges. In most countries these days, it is not a direct nomination and appointment at the very top level. It's not by the head of state.
And that is former Chief Justice Sophia Ekufu speaking there. She says that in taking up a public position, always remember that public perception is very key. And if it's going to conflict with the work you're doing, then maybe you should recuse yourself from that position. But really, are there any connections with regards to the accusations that are being leveled against, especially Dr. Piahene, and whether he really is an MPP member, a TESCON patron, or not? There have been a number of photos that have come up with him making appearances at TESCON events, somewhere at UNR. And of course, we have a conversation here. The NPP communicator that day, Vera, did say that he was not a member of the NPP and he had only been invited as a guest. Well, there's another video that has popped up of him speaking at a radio station, and it looks as if he was speaking as a communications member for the NPP. I will not make that conclusion. I'll let you listen to it, watch it, and then you can deduce. When we get back, I'll introduce my guest to you. Take a look.
Oh, yeah. Last me no much chase car table suma students. Ya kwato abanon. Ghana for chirum se sade na amwa. Enu bi na yenso yesi mu de munya ye living no. So mo na nje ne se no kranka mo nye campaign o. Meboa. Se mo ma hu se ade ekofu ye mo de levi ba pa wom. Ye wini ene ye nye campaign, because we all know the amount of money most spending as a political party you're spending in an election year, especially during election. Yeah. It wouldn't say you live near the ban. A sure bet for you to win. Minua, my bet say atwamamo. Us na to atwamamo. You live us na atwamamo. Any man needs for munyai. And also musumu. And now I'm Ghana for the beer. In each and Ghana for the binyantin. You maybe And the one we started saying say no me lose election. What the mommy and lose election. Now I'm so storm on air con. And so much bro more parliament in Yano. Idea will be the bar who be advantage every election. What was the change now? Many asthma making what matter? Idea will be him say nipe what the bap. Hey, I'll have an advantage over him. Who will be cover boxing and what only weak point. Money exposed no one to change now still weak point in my own yet. You are not being fair. That's all ground yet truthful. I don't know. I'm Ghana for the door and what's a Ghana for the door. Ghana for the door. I just say no, the support now. Nanka initially no. Nanka umede minority in terms of say you live in a yampene no. And na I started adie saying no eba form no. Because Union Mendes for they are not consistent. One, it was in their manifesto 2020. Say me boa pa on kanchire me. Ebi an so a typo error. It was in their manifesto so mbeye omuba mobile money tax omede beba. Two, Mosi ya de ba ye be lose election. Munya ni family na mu lose election so mo say da. Eno na ama Ghana for ehunu the difference. Timi dem Mr. Media, if you give me the whole day to talk about Levy, I will talk about it, because ye hu emphasis e de be breye. Na de ba ko amen so me can say if there is the need, and that is why as a government, a listening government, yes, our town hall meetings, yes, a consultation, yeah. If I don't do no, Ghana for you live in the Ghana for majority of Ghanaians embrace it. Said no, yeah, but the percentage in Ghana for who say yem family for ma. We can talk about it, and that is why at a point, me am original chairman, bro your crack so.
And so you'll make that deduction yourself. Let us know what you think. Is he really a member of the NPP, and should he recuse himself from that position that he has been appointed for as an EC board member. This morning, I have lawyer Joyce Bar Mukhtari. She's a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, also in charge of his PR during his campaign as well. She's also a former Deputy Minister for Transport. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the studios. How are you doing?
Pleasure's mine. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. I hope you've had a good week.
Oh, not so far. So
Yeah?
yes.
All right. We haven't seen Ellen Amadeko in a while. She's finally back in the studios with us. We've missed you. Good morning. How are you doing? And she's a member of the NPP communications team.
Good morning.
Everything okay?
Oh, yes.
There's always a spot of red in your look. It has to be your nails or your lip or something.
I love red.
You love, I can tell that. I can tell. But I hope you've had a good week as well.
Yes, I've had so far. And good morning to our viewers. It's been a while. I think this whole year.
Yeah, we haven't
I
seen
haven't
you.
been here. So happy New Year.
Well, you got a replacement.
Replacements for.
You say you haven't been here all year. That's
Oh,
nice.
yeah. And we've seen a few new faces.
Oh yes. I mean,
on the
we need
show.
to allow other people to also
true,
share
though.
their opinions.
Yes.
You can't have the limelight all the time. So once in a while.
But it's good that you're back.
Oh, definitely.
Especially for this conversation as well.
Yes.
I mean, Codeo is speaking, CDD has spoken, Ghanaians have spoken. They're saying that there's an issue of conflict of interest here. And if the president is really concerned about the perception that Ghanaians have, especially about the Electoral Commission, which is supposed to be the referee for elections in the country, why appoint someone who clearly is an MPP member into an office as important as EC board? Should these people resign or not?
Well, good morning once again. The national organizer of the NPP, who I believe have access to all members of the NPP, have stated that he's not a member or a card-bearing member of the NPP. But that doesn't mean that he's not a sympathizer. So I think we have to make the definitions clear. He is not a member of the NPP. But as to whether he's a sympathizer of the NPP, that one, it's quite obvious from all the videos you have played that he has his sympathies for the NPP. But there's nothing wrong with having sympathies for the NPP.
You're saying
After
that the
all,
video we're seeing, that shows more sympathy and he's not a member?
Yes, you have to be a card. I am a card-bearing member of the NPP. I have
Okay.
my party cards. I've had it since 2006. So if somebody, I'm appointed to any position, and you think I don't qualify because I am a member, that you can't deny because my records are there. And my records have been there for over 20 years. So I am a card-bearing member of the NPP.
And he's not?
But he's not, according to our national organizer. And I don't have any reason to think that my national organizer would lie about it. But he does, obviously, he does have sympathies for the NPP. And there's nothing wrong with having sympathies for the NPP. After all, over 6 million Ghanaians voted for the NPP. So, definitely, some Ghanaians will have sympathies for the NPP. Does that disqualify him from being on this particular board? I don't think so. He meets all the generic, as the gentleman, is it Reverend
Degbe.
Degbe,
Yes.
as Reverend Degbe said, he meets all the criteria to be a member. I had the criteria is you have to be able to be an MP. We don't have any problems with that. He meets all the other criteria for him. So legally, you cannot force him out. You cannot ask him to go legally because he meets it. So I can see all of them trying to do is to use the moral standing and conflict of interest. I don't see the conflict of interest here.
You don't see it
I
at all?
don't. It is not the Electoral Commission or its members that determines whether Party A wins or Party B wins.
But they serve as the referee.
The fact that they serve, the other referees, are you trying to tell me that they don't have party affiliations or they don't have parties that they affiliate to? Maybe they haven't been quite open about it as he has. But I don't see anything wrong legally with him being
But
there.
the EC is supposed to be an independent
The
body.
EC is supposed to
so
be...
these are people who should not have any affiliation or tilt towards one party or the other because you have to be fair.
Bella, that is going to be difficult.
You have to be fair.
In this country we live in, everybody is tilted towards a particular party.
Not
whether it
necessarily.
is CPP, whether it is PNs, we just have less than 10% floating voters, that we call them. For me, if he does not flaunt any legal means, like he's not a criminal, he's qualified to be there, I really don't see why he shouldn't be there. Just because he has affiliations towards the NPP. Are you trying to say that NPP members are not Ghanaians? and that they are not qualified. For
Nobody has
certain
said that
positions.
necessarily.
Good. I, Ellen, cannot be there because, as I said, I am a card-bearing member of the NPP. So he is not, unless you have evidence to prove that you bring his party card. That shows that he is.
But you have just said that he's a sympathizer. Should the president not have known better than that for a sympathizer, especially for an office like the EC board? Already there are concerns about other members of the EC leadership who have been accused.
Concerns by who?
You haven't heard that?
That's what, who?
You haven't heard that?
The president is supposed to know the sympathies of everybody he appoints. The president is supposed to know that.
But is he not aware? Has he not seen these videos? Has he not heard at the time when he made the appointment?
What the president is supposed to know is that he is not a card-bearing member of any political party. And he is not a card-bearing member of the NPP. What he is, I believe, is a sympathizer of the NPP. And there's no rule that goes against any sympathizer of the NPP getting any position. I think the gentleman is qualified. And I heard you're talking about another person too.
Hajia, yes. There were three of them. So there's Hajia as well. Concerns about her also being a member.
Have you seen Hajia anywhere?
Well, I'm going to ask you about that right now.
I haven't seen her anywhere. In fact, until these appointments came up, I didn't know all three of them. And I do come from the Bunu region. I've worked in the Bunu region for a while. I've been with Tescon for a while. And so when people say that he's a Tescon patron. I haven't seen him in any of our activities. But then that doesn't mean that he wasn't there. I mean, the ones I have been involved in, I haven't seen him. Hajia, I haven't seen her in any of our party activities. But then the point is, I'm not all over Ghana, so I also don't know. So unless you have proof that Hajia, what I'm hearing is that they said her mother is an appointee. Her mother, not herself. Seriously. So my mother's older sister was a member of the NDC. She's passed on. She actually went all the way to become the deputy minister for education, and then she became the Eastern Regional Minister, Madam Patience Addo. That is my mother's older sister. So one day, if ever the NDC comes into power and I'm given a position, you say that because my auntie was a top member of the NDC, I am not supposed to.
In this case, you're a card-bearing member, so yes, that would be also of great concern.
I'm a card-bearing member of the NPP. Is Haji a card-bearing member of the NPP?
Is she?
I don't know. She's not, obviously. What people are saying is that it's her mother. Her mother has a right to join whatever. We have, in our political space, we have brothers.
And could it be that it's because of that? That is why she is also getting this position. Could it be?
I don't think so. I think Hajia is qualified. There's also the Reverend Minister who is also qualified. Every one of them is qualified. But the fact that somebody does have leanings towards a political party, in my opinion, does not disqualify him or her from any position, unless he is blatantly breaking the rules, such as having a party card. And this gentleman, or all of them, I don't see them having an MPP card.
The EC has come under some very strong criticism. I mean, not just from the opposition, but from some Ghanaians, some faction of society, from Madame Jean Mensah and the way she has even led the EC up until now. That a lot of people have had concerns about. Now, there's issues about Bosman Asare as well, who many have accused of being a member of the NPP as well at the time when he was appointed. Now, don't you think that with all these accusations and the fact that, yes, no proof has been given necessarily, but of course, people have said constantly that even their positions makes it look as if the NPP or the president is appointing his own people or people who are sympathizers of the NPP into a position that's supposed to be independent. Now there's a third appointment that comes in as well. Does it really mean that the president is not listening to public perception or paying attention to the concerns by Ghanaians?
I will still go back to where I'm coming from. Are they not Ghanaians? Are they not qualified? People have been screaming about Mr. Bosman Asare for years. Doesn't he do his job? Do we have any concerns about his job? For me, so far as they are doing the jobs that they are supposed to do, and they are Ghanaians, their sympathies does not matter. They should do their job, unless you have a problem with the job that they are doing, and we have evidence that they are not doing what they are supposed to do. Where their political affiliations are, I don't think it matters. Unless, of course, they take the extra step by going to pick a party card like I have. And none of them have. The fact that you don't agree with them on certain issues, and the people you are complaining about are the NDC. And my point is, and now let me get to that, it doesn't matter who the EC was or who the commissioners are. If you win an election, you would win.
It doesn't matter who the EC board is. And
You-
yes,
you-
the
you
NPP
should-
raised objections to...
You should be able to count your votes and know what you got so that you would have it to defend yourself if you think you've been cheated. You should get your act together down there.
Was the NPP comfortable with Madam Charlotte?
Whoever is the what do you call the referee? For me, it doesn't matter. Get your job done. Nobody will be comfortable with everybody in this country. Nobody is comfortable with anybody. Why you are sitting? Somebody is not comfortable with you sitting here.
But did the NPP not raise objections to Madam Charlotte to say?
The fact that we raised objections doesn't mean that she didn't do her job. She did her job.
So why did he take her out?
So nobody took her out. It's what she did that took her out. So the fact that you are sitting here, Bella, somebody is not happy with what you are doing. Until the person brings proof that Bella is not doing her work well. Your affiliations, whom you know, whoever your parents are, who your brothers and sisters are, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Do your job.
Do your job. Lawyer, do you agree?
Well, you see, when you listen to the MPP and all the... A very good morning to everybody, and thank you for having me. And I'm not surprised to hear Amma. And you can tell that she's struggling very, very hard this morning. You know, on this matter, I'm sure the last time I was here, I actually made my views very, very clear. I'm sure that many other Ghanaians have expressed very similar sentiments. There's very little that anybody else can say. Safe to say that more kanokrana me no more. That you can say all that you want to say, I will totally ignore you. You can scream, you can shout, you can criticize all you want. I just really don't care. I don't think there's anything that is any different. That I don't care, that I'm totally insensitive, that I'm oblivious to what is going on, that I basically don't give a toss what you think. It's just how President Akufo-Addo has literally run this administration ever since we swore him into office. There's actually nothing new about that. You know, I recall when Osman Asari was actually appointed, his own students, he had a very public debate with a few of them, and it was very obvious that even in his neutrality, he definitely exposed himself by showing his sympathies lay with the New Patriotic Party. On this occasion, we have a gentleman, Dr. Piahini, whose pronouncements, whose vehemence, whose arguments, whose debates, irrespective of where he stands, are very clearly that of the MPP, or at least a mouthpiece of sin. What I want to ask Amma and everybody else in the New Patriotic Party, I am an NDC member. Do I know all the people who communicate for our party? Do I know all the many people across this country, 16 regions, 275 constituencies? Bella, not everybody who communicates for either of these parties is a card-bearing member or has to be for that matter. You just have to be sympathetic to our cause.
And that's enough.
And that's most of them.
Communicate.
You know, we have the core group who will mainly be the very formal or official communicators.
Okay.
We have the many others across the country. We have a very small platform. You probably wouldn't have more than 200 people. Even us. How many of us generally do you see who go around speaking for the party in any case? So you have no way. You can never tell. Look, this is a great contributing terms. And I think we ought not to pretend or try to explain or wish it away. Look, this is a key function of a constitutional body. To be arbiters, to be an umpire, to be at least as neutral as you can reasonably be when it comes to adjudicating elections, for that matter. They bring various CIs and various bills. They request for all sorts of support and request for all sorts of budgetary allocations. When you have the face of the Electoral Commission beginning to look more like an extension of the New Patriotic Party, and then you have various government spokespersons going on and defending the indefensible, nobody should go to the New Patriotic Party or to President Akufo-Addo for that matter seeking for any moral lessons. They have none to share and none to teach. Even if the New Patriotic Party were a church, nobody will go there for confessions. It is very obvious and apparent to all who are watching that they utterly do not care, that the same recklessness that has characterized their work is pretty much same. It's almost as if, look, I'm almost done. I don't give a toss who I appoint to go anywhere. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me much. Where is the judgment, the discretion that you expect your leader to at least use when it comes to some of these things?
But the argument is based on moral grounds at this point, because really the law does not prevent the president from appointing anyone with party colors into that position.
As I said, you won't be going to a New Patriotic Party to seek for morality or moral lessons. So this has nothing to do with morality. Let's look at ethics. Let's look at values. Let's look at discretion. Let's look at a sense of a leader's ability to make judgment calls. Judgment calls that are fair, that are equitable, that are acceptable, that meet our expectations of what we expect our leaders to do, first and foremost. If, for example, I were nominated to serve on the Electoral Commission, I believe I've made this point many times, I would decline.
You would have declined?
Absolutely, in good faith. I would absolutely decline. I've served this party in so many capacities. I can probably be objective to a point, but in terms of my neutrality and standing within the public space, you cannot defend any form of objectivity in that regard. It will undermine and erode the whole notion of independence of that body. But think about it. Imagine that the National Democratic Congress had gone out there to appoint one of our very own communicators, irrespective of whether they're card-bearing members or not, or a patron of our team, or any of these individuals, to serve in the same capacity. What would you do? Look, I love what the former Chief Justice said. And I think I repeated this point, maybe because I'm not a former Chief Justice, it probably didn't receive as much attention.
Which one exactly?
When I mentioned that if you were a judge, you can recuse yourself. I think it was on the same platform.
Yeah.
But under circumstances, how can you say that an individual who speaks like this, in fact, even his comments are even more patronizing than Ama's, even this morning. His comments are more partisan than what she said this morning. There is no objectivity, even in his conversation and his thought trends. And I've seen so many of these videos. He lived in a community. He worked in a community. But you see, let me say something. This whole notion about nepotism, clanism, this family and friends approach to doing business, this aficionados and offering jobs to them, this foot soldier administration that we're currently witnessing, nothing has changed.
How so?
What? Absolutely nothing. It's only gotten worse. And you know, normally when leaders start on a certain tangent and people watch on and allow them to get away with anything, it only gets worse. And that's where we are. It is very obvious that President Akufo-Addo really doesn't care much. His inconsistencies would actually serve the purpose of a whole lecture. You can start from A to Z. What he promises versus what he does. On corruption, on the economy, on our health, on appointments, on the size of his government, on the size of the appointees, on what he does with our, public funds, name it. But the biggest challenge is the fact that when we undertake these courses, not many people would come on board and help push this particular conversation. But on this occasion, we've had Codeo. They are a coalition of what? Election observers. They are no mean body. They actually oversee some of the peace conversations that take place prior to every election.
Yeah.
They are election observers, citizens of our own country, from varied backgrounds. They cannot all be wrong.
But what could go wrong?
When you take CDD, for example, have you seen the Afrobarometer report? That 10% of Ghanaians only. So the other 90%. Think about it. That is how low the image of the EC has sunk. And these appointments even make it worse. Look at the frosty relationship between the Electoral Commissioner and the persons that she's supposed actually to moderate, to work with. Look at how IPAC has degenerated, where we even now go out and pick up mushroom parties who have not satisfied fully the conditions of the Political Parties Act. And yet we tout them as political parties deserving of participating in these conversations when we have established criteria for which a party would qualify otherwise. It is something that we ought to take very seriously. How various institutions are being weaponized, are being bastardized, are being made partisan, are being reduced actually to platforms for all sorts of activists.
But it all boils down to the power.
And dubious character.
It all boils down to the power that's been given to the president to appoint into some of these offices. And maybe it's about time we have a conversation about the review of the Constitution.
As I said to you, the borderline is the level of judgment. What discretion a leader wants to use, how much of it they want to use. The latitude they have within that discretion is not absolute. On this occasion, it's why I single out my utter disappointment with the role of the Council of State. If indeed these consultations were done, if indeed the background checks were done, that some due diligence was carried out, and yet we still had and listen to what the president said when he swore them in.
But is the Council of State's advice binding on the president? It is not necessarily.
But that's the point I'm making. So they had no views about an individual who speaks like this.
But what if they raise those objections, but it may not be binding on the president?
But I started by telling you that the president doesn't give a toss. It is obvious that the president doesn't care what you say. It is obvious that with all the hardship in which we are, have you seen the cost of food items? I buy baby food. I buy diapers. I know how much cost has escalated over the period. Look at the levels of inflation that we're grappling with. Ghanaians are struggling. You understand? And in all these conversations, have you ever heard the president show any empathy, attempt even to show a level of appreciation for what people are going through? What do we see? More appointments. It's almost as if the president gloats on these occasions. I watched him yesterday. He looked very happy, very relaxed when he swore in the new ministers.
He should have looked any different?
But that's the point I'm making. When the people who queued to elect you into office have taken great exceptions to the size of government machinery, the drain on the public purse, that has already been totally raped to the point of zero. But you make these appointments and you appear very excited.
But he makes the appointments for the legislature to either pass or reject. The legislature passed them. So how then, I mean, once they're passed, what can the president do?
Why?
The onus then lies on both the majority and the minority in parliament. In this case, did the minority not even fail us?
Don't shift the blame.
Nobody's shifting the blame, but look, the minority assured us that they were going to reject these ministers.
I'm sure that the minority
what went wrong?
Are all members of parliament. They will do their very best. When even members within the New Patriotic Party, 80 or so of them, came out boldly, demanding the resignation of the president's cousin, who also doubles as our finance minister. What was the result? Look, there is only a limit to what parliament can or cannot do, considering the numbers they have. And I believe that in terms of the protests, in terms of the discuss about the numbers or the size of government, more than enough has been said about it. But I'm asking you a question. Maybe I shouldn't be asking you the questions. Codeo has come out opposing these appointments because of perceived conflicts in their backgrounds, in their pronouncements, that there cannot be any neutrality that can be, ascribed to these people. What has happened? CDD, a very well-respected CSO, has come out. Is government ticking positive boxes? No. They've been ticking these negative boxes for a very long time. Maybe it's also because of COVID-19 and the Ukraine war that the president somehow probably doesn't even care much about who he appoints. Is that part of the reason? Are these some of the excuses we should be thinking about? Can you imagine, at the time when Madame Jean Mensa decided to come out and admit that some errors had been made in the collation of the results, do you know that in other jurisdictions, this could actually have set us back in our democratic experiment? That it could have led to serious outbreaks of conflicts, but for the nature of the NDC's leadership and the approach of our leadership to calm tempers, to calm nerves, and to ensure that our party did not, rise up and take the law into their own hands. You know, Bella, I think that as a people, it is time for us to start to demand accountability from our leaders.
Okay.
That we go out there to elect a leader because we expect that leader to carry our aspirations. You know, once you're elected into office, whether you are NPP or NDC, this is the leader that Ghanaians have chosen. It is why we have a system that allows us to say when 50+1 people have elected somebody. Everybody must accept the fact that this is our president, this is our leader. We expect that individual to be consistent. We expect them to be conscious of our public sentiments. We expect them to take on board, even to a point, our criticisms. We expect that whatever latitude they are granted or guaranteed under the Constitution, that they will take it to a certain point. That reasonably and logically, the president ought to know that an individual who communicates in this manner ought not to serve on a body such as the EC.
Okay,
and
Ellen.
no matter what we say, they would have a certain influence, irrespective. They would always wield some influence.
Ellen, do we see the president taking a position of not necessarily caring about what Ghanaians think, which is why we constantly see this happening?
What do you constantly see happening?
Well, the position that the president takes and the fact that there have been constant allegations that there's a show of arrogance, a show of not caring about what Ghanaians think, because even with the appointments, I remember that when these appointments came up, many Ghanaians mentioned that at this time, when we are broke as a country, should we be appointing into office? Should we not be consolidating some of these ministries as well so we can reduce the numbers? Even members of the MPP, senior members of the MPP, had come out to say that we don't think that we need these number of ministers in governance at this time. The president has not shown any interest in that. He came out and said, well, as far as he's concerned, his ministers are doing incredibly well and there's no need to reshuffle or cut down.
We would always have a country where everybody is affiliated to everybody. Madam Joyce is talking about family and friends. Is she not a family member of Mr. John Mahama? Are they not related? People will come into office and they would appoint people they think can do the job and are comfortable with. So if we are talking about family and friends, I believe that even in the NDC time, they were family and friends. She's a typical example. I don't see where we would have to attack the president at every turn because we think that he's using his family and friends. Were you expecting him to use his enemies? If the person is capable and can do the job, what exactly is the problem?
But did he not accuse the NDC of doing family and friends? Did he not say that he will not do family and friends when he takes over power?
Madam Joyce is more than capable of doing everything that she's given to do. I haven't heard anybody talk about her work or what she did when she was in office. She did her work well. But that doesn't negate the fact that she's related to the former president. So this whole business of family and friends, I believe we should put it aside because people will come into power. If I am in power, I would definitely, most definitely, give some positions to my family and friends who I think can do the job. You don't expect me to work with my enemies. So me, this whole thing, unless the person is not qualified, then we have a problem. When the person is qualified, the person is a Ghanaian, the person can do the job. Because I am related to the president, I shouldn't get a job.
Is the finance minister qualified?
I think he is. He's been there for the past 6 years. He's doing his job. Unless you have a problem.
The majority MPs
unless you have
came
a
out
problem,
and said that they don't want him to remain in office.
The finance minister is one of the most vilified ministers ever in this country.
Why is that so?
He's always being put up for what people have all sorts of accusations against, including MPs who put him up for him to lose his job. What was the process that they started? I forgot the name.
These are the MPs who belong to the MPP.
The NDC MPs, what they started in Parliament. I've forgotten the.
No, but the about process. 80 MPs, before that, about 80 MPs from the MPP came out and said they wanted the resignation of the finance minister. You
start a process, the man comes and he's clean. He's washed clean. The finance minister has been given a lot of opportunities. He always comes, he starts speaking. Everybody agrees that what he said is right, and he goes his way. So we should leave the finance minister alone. Because obviously,
what has he said that everybody agrees to?
He's doing his work well. I mean, the whole Parliament of Ghana decided to get him out. You couldn't get him out. No, what happened? So obviously he's doing his work well. Let's get back to the issue.
What went wrong? Hold on. I mean, let's talk about it because you're saying that he's clean.
We are not talking about the finance
I understand,
minister.
but I asked about the president's appointment, even that you have not responded to it.
I said the whole country gave him the opportunity to come and explain his side of the story. And in my opinion, he explained it well.
In your opinion?
So he still remains the finance minister.
And you think that he's doing an incredible job?
I think so. We are not talking about the finance minister now. We are talking about appointments and we are talking about family and friends.
I asked about the president.
And I'm trying to explain that every president that comes, including Mr. John Mahama, would appoint family and friends. There's nothing wrong with appointing your family and friends so far as they can do the job and do it well.
Did President Akufo-Addo know this? Did he not raise objections to this particular issue when he was in opposition?
But that's the question I'm asking. And seriously, Maybe I should just step in at this point.
Please hold on. Let Helen land. I'll come back to you.
You are attacking somebody. You are on his case all the time because you think he has appointed people you don't like.
Is that really the case?
You are not supposed to like.
Ellen.
You are not supposed to like who the president appoints. I've been saying it this morning. The person is supposed to be capable of doing the job. Unless you have proof that the person can't do his job, you do not expect the president to appoint his enemies. And I gave a typical example of Madam Joy sitting right here. She's a family member of the former president. He appointed her. She did her job. So if we are on this tangent of accusing the president because you think he's appointing his family and his friends, it is done everywhere. People appoint people they know.
But should that be the norm? If you say it is done everywhere, is that right? And if Ghanaians are saying that at this point we should avoid...
What is the constitutional matter in this matter?
Hold on.
What is the illegalities that has happened in this appointment?
Okay, hold on. So lawyer Josba Muktari is here, of course. You're saying that she's a family member of former President John Dramani Mahama. But in this case, if she gets appointed to the Electoral Commission as maybe chair or a member of the board, would the NPP keep quiet?
It's the doctor, I don't know his surname. The doctor, Appiahene. Is he a family member of the
but you said that he's a sympathizer of the NPP.
And the fact that he's a sympathizer, does that make it wrong? That's why I keep on saying, legally, what is wrong with this appointment?
Everything.
What is wrong with
everything?
Which part? Which rules?
The ethics are wrong.
Which parts
the
of the
values are
Constitution
wrong, and
says that it is wrong?
Ellen, please hold on, lawyer. So this is a man who is sitting on radio and talking about e-levy and why e-levy should be passed.
So what is wrong with what he's saying?
But we all, Ghanaians came out and said e-levy was a problem. Eventually, this government could not even make, they could not even make the money that they were expecting. Hold on. No. Ellen, hold on. Let me ask my question. Hold on. I'm sorry. You don't need to tell me what's relevant. Now, he is on radio and he is talking about why e-levy should be passed. And he's speaking as a member of the NPP, clearly.
As a member of the
So if he says that Miami chairman, Miami Bono region chairman.
And so what? Does that give him a party card?
Ellen.
I have told you that
if he says his own party member and he talks about the NPP and says we.
He is not a card-bearing member of the party.
But he's a sympathizer. So how is he going to be neutral when he takes up this position?
There's nothing wrong with you being a sympathizer. There's nothing wrong with somebody appointing a sympathizer to any position. The point is, can he do the job?
Ellen, will he be neutral in office?
What is he going to? Is he the one going to count the votes?
And let's remember,
as for the EC matter, I think we appoint people there whom we think can do the job. And in this instance, unless you bring me evidence that this gentleman cannot do his job, I do not see what this whole thing is about. And then you go and rope in the president, trying to put him out as somebody who is uncaring because he has appointed this gentleman and that he's doing family and friends. And I'm just trying to explain that any president would also, as part of the people,
hold on, lawyer, please.
Hold on, lawyer. He would appoint family and friends, including her, who was appointed as a
lawyer, please, I'll let you come in.
Even though she was a family of Mr. Mahama, and there was nothing wrong with it.
Would you be comfortable then, as a party, if lawyer Josba Muktari is appointed to the Electoral Commission?
It's a card-bearing member of the NDC.
Don't ask.
Dr. Appiahene is not a card-bearing member of the NPP.
But he speaks for the NPP. How did he go and sit on radio then? Was he not sent by probably the communications leader for that region?
Which radio station?
Can anybody as a sympathizer just go to a radio station and speak?
Happens.
This was a debate between him and an NDC person.
We have a lot of people. We have over how many thousands of radio stations all over Ghana. I do not know the radio station he went to. I do not know who sent him there. But definitely, people go all over radio stations talking for whoever they believe in.
Let me come in here. And irrespective of Ama's so-called arrogance and indignation this morning, I think she defeats the whole conversation. President Kufuor, President Kufuor,
hold on, please.
President,
please hold on. Please hold on. You let her make her point. Let her make her point, then we can establish.
Had his brother as his defense minister, his direct brother. Did you hear anybody talking about family and friends? Was that a conversation at the time? This one has over 50 and counting. Husbands, wives, exes, all sorts of categories of them. You know, look, that word nepotism, Google it. See what it means. If you have one or two, why not? Of course, no president goes out there to go and employ his enemies. But on some independent bodies, it requires a certain pseudo-neutrality. That is what is lacking. Some level of ethics is required, a level of integrity and credibility by going to speak in the manner in which Dr. Piahini was seen doing on that video, cancels out any sense of neutrality that the public would have. Look, sometimes public perception is also very critical in these conversations. Like I said, it is not everybody who sympathizes with our party that bears a card or that is formally registered as a communications person for the party, or for that matter, a government spokesperson. There are so many of them. Why do you think that not that many of them come in and out of here? Go and check the list that we all have. And I said to you, and I'll repeat it again, that if everybody has an issue with this particular appointment, that of the lady and that gentleman, there must be cause for they themselves to consider their positions untenable. And I remember with Dr. Bosman Asari, all these conversations and debates took place and nobody listened. You see, when a president decides that I own this country, that I can do whatever gives me pleasure and pleases me, there's very little we can do. But what I would want to say, and say this beautifully, is that there's a good reason why every 4 years we go out there to elect our leaders. President Akufo-Addo has done his second term, and obviously he's leaving. His whole presidency has been characterized by this, a morbid sense of loyalty to these members of his family and friends cabal who work with him. I think that would be one of his flaws in his time as a leader, that he probably burdened the subject of loyalty. And in the end, it had undermined whatever good intentions he had to serve in office. And I'm sure maybe one of these days, when he grants a certain interview and wants to be very sincere with himself, he will admit. And let's face it, one of the worst performing finance ministers we have is the president's own cousin, the finance minister. And this is not personal. This is a very objective assessment. If the economy has gotten worse, if all the rating agencies are giving us even worse ratings, if the IMF is struggling even to entertain our application for a program, what other evidence do you need to show that this inept, reckless, excuse my French sometimes, very insincere finance minister ought not to have been history? Look, sometimes, just because somebody is technically competent doesn't make them right for a job. You understand? So maybe Piahini may have all the qualifications that Amma wants to sing about, but he's wrong for the job because his neutrality has been called into question. His level of conflict has been exposed. The fact that he cannot be an objective arbiter is also in question. And on this occasion, even his reputation is at stake. If he were a man of any personal integrity, as we expect of persons who are considered for such leadership, I told you before, he ought to have reasonably resigned or, declined the appointment. Same for that lady. I don't know much about the lady. I've heard snipers. I haven't heard her speak, but I've heard she's married to an MPP. I don't know whether it's a card-bearing member or just a member. I mean, her whole family has a long history of being members of the MPP. As I said, I don't know much about her. I've only picked up these sentiments from the statements and from the conversations outside. But let me state that this same reckless approach to doing government business is one of the reasons why we are where we are. This refusal to adhere to any form of ethics is why we are here. There can be no sense of values or value system. Look, some of the things that the president's friends and family did, Bella, if I made a mistake and did any of those things, I'm sure I would certainly not be working anywhere near President Mahama. And you can check my whole record as a professional for well over 20 years. Nobody would doubt my capacity or capability, or the fact that I conduct myself in a manner that makes it acceptable for me to continue in a certain category. The comms work that I do for the party has nothing to do necessarily with President Mahama, for that matter, but everything to do with my membership of the party. And I think sometimes let's put these things in proper perspective and context.
All right.
Let's be honest with ourselves. It is wrong for us to sit here and entertain any notions that the president going out there to appoint these very, obviously committed New Patriotic Party sympathizers to the Electoral Commission should never be acceptable. They're wrong. For all the ethics, for all the reasons that you can think of. Why? Then the president should appoint his wife and his brothers. Of course, he's done that already. I don't know what else he's going to do, as I said. Maybe the only thing left is for him to take Auntie Rebecca to the Electoral Commission.
That won't happen.
Well,
that won't happen.
No, but that's the only thing that is outstanding.
That won't happen.
It's the only thing he hasn't done so far.
I don't think the president will go that far.
That's the only thing he hasn't done.
But let's
maybe because she might probably not want to take the pay appointment. But that's all that we haven't seen.
Okay.
Anything
Let's take a break at this
seen.
point. Let's take a break at this point. When we come back, we'll talk about the school feeding program and the challenges that caterers are facing. As it stands now, caterers in the Ashanti region have declared a strike. Reason being that for 3 terms, they have not received payments, even though they have cooked meals for these students. And as a result, they're saying that if they don't receive their monies and if their allocation is not increased from 97 pesos per child to 3 Ghana cedis per child, they will not go back to the kitchens. We'll be right back to have a conversation on that. Don't go anywhere.